Call the meeting order for the Village of Round Lake Beach for Monday, March 23rd, 2015. This is our public hearing. Please call the roll.
Trustee Husk.
Here.
Trustee Valdez.
Here.
Trustee Smith. Trustee Butler.
Here.
Trustee Mount. Trustee Mattingly.
Here.
Mayor Hill.
Here. Let the record show quorum is present. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mayor.
Motion by Trustee
Second.
Manley, second by Trustee Valdez. Any questions, additions, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved as written. We only have one item of business today, 2015-2016 fiscal year budget. We're going to have a hearing, and then there'll be questions afterwards if they're appropriate. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board, and staff. So, as the mayor mentioned, the purpose of today's meeting is to host the first budget hearing, or the first and only budget hearing. And we're going to start with just the financial planning process, which I believe we're all sort of familiar with how it works. And so the first item in the financial planning purposes or process is the a multi-year financial forecast, and this is normally presented to the board around October, November. Then we have the multi-year capital plan around the same time based on the financial forecast, funding, and also the needs are indicated here in this capital plan, same October and November timeframe. Then we have the annual budget, and that's where we are right now. The process really starts in October, again, with the financial forecast, the capital planning, and then today is more of a reviewing what has been discussed throughout the year, and if there are any changes or questions, then they can be addressed. There's also the part of the reporting process includes the monthly treasurer's report. So every month during the finance committee meeting, there is a report presented, and that gives an estimated revenues and estimated expenditures, and more or less around March we know where we're going to end up, or we have an idea where we're going to end up with the budget. And the final part of these is the audit in a long ways, CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and this is done throughout July and October. This is when the numbers are confirmed. This is where we find out what the ending fund balance is going to be for budgeting purposes. Again, the financial planning, some of the issues that are addressed during this time is the if there are any trends going on, then we can identify those. We set some of the budget limits, especially for the capital plan. And then we also, again, identify the capital funding that's available for the upcoming year. The capital plan consists of 4 different systems. So that includes the transportation, which is the roads, water system, the sanitary sewer, and the storm sewer system. Again, during October, November, this is the time frame when these systems are updated with specifics. And this year's budget is basically coming out of what was presented in October, November of this year. So for this fiscal year, the fiscal year 2016 budget, or the proposed budget, it's about 15 to 16 projects, and they were all outlined here. And we also send these in advance. And these, we are taking into account that one of them, it may be a federal aided road program, and that's, again, we're in the planning process for that. Then we have the water main system, which is a basically it's a $400,000 for the current fiscal year, and outline is more or less the area that we're planning to work on for the fiscal year 2016 project. Again, more details were also provided. We can go into details later on at the end of the presentation if need be. The sanitary sewer system, that is basically funded via the $4 per month per account, and that's about $377,000. That's the funding for this system, and that's what's included in the current fiscal year budget, proposed budget. Some of the highlights for the proposed budget: So there are no requests for additional staff. We are budgeting for 77 full-time equivalent employees. There's no request to increase the fees. Again, during the financial forecast, that's at that time we reviewed the different fees that we have in place. And if based on different economic conditions or what other municipalities are doing, we may come back to the board and propose different things, but at this time, there's no request to increase fees. There's a fully funded capital plan. Again, this is all based on a pay-as-you-go and the issuance of debt over the next 15 years. And that's also outlined in the capital forecast and the capital plan and the financial forecast. We are adhering to the 65% fund balance policy as well during the proposed budget. And we're including about $100,000 to create a tree replacement program for the upcoming years. The plan is anywhere between 300 and 400 trees throughout the community. And we may come back to the board, or we will come back to the board with a full range or long-term range or long-range plan for to replace the trees throughout the entire community over the next 5 to 6 years. Some of the challenges that communities are facing right now, and it's not just the village of Round Lake Beach, as you know, anything on the news nowadays is showing what the impact of the states is going to do. Some of the rising costs for salaries and benefits. Property values continue to decline. The unemployment, unfortunately for the village, continues to be higher than the state. And then the also cost of maintaining the buildings. What has the village done, or what has village management done? This is basically outlining this on this slide. And we have, the village has come up with a multi-year financial forecast, which helps us plan better when it comes to the savings and making sure that budgeting is being allocated in a long-term planning instead of a year-by-year basis. There's also the capital plan, which is, this is one of the items that any village or any community will spend the most money in. So having a long-term plan is beneficial for any community because that they can identify funding in the long term. When it comes to operations, we are in the planning stage, or basically year 2 of these, I believe, of an operating philosophy that includes cross-training. So employees are cross-trained across the department so we can make sure that we're using every resource we have efficiently. We're increasing the use of technology, and then we're also creating different private and public partnerships, so that if we can resort to private businesses to handle some functions better than we do, then we propose that to the board, and that turns into significant savings. And we have also come up with different financial policies. These are very conservative, which are very beneficial when it comes to budgeting for public money. So throughout the year, departments are basically they're requested to come up with different goals for the fiscal year, and these are some of the budget expectations for this fiscal year for 2016. So we have economic development. They're working on updating the building code and zoning code. They're also analyzing the code enforcement and inspection functions. On the police side, they're currently taking a look at the security systems, training programs, and emergency information for businesses. In the finance department, we're working on expanding our reporting, which is already very extensive, but one of the things that one of the components of financial reporting is the annual financial report that, along with the audit, we add a lot of statistical information, provides a good insight on the village operations. We did implement a BS&A system during this year. The plan is to audit that we're using the system correctly, and for that we need to have a implementation plan, and also updating the capital plan to include the buildings. Public Works, they're looking at right-of-way sampling stations, installing bypass Wood Street, and then, as I mentioned before, the tree replacement program. Again, the Civic Center, even though it's not a department, it's still an important function and within the village, and it's important to have different expectations when it comes to budgeting and when it comes to operations also. And these are some of the areas that we're going to be looking into when it comes to the Civic Center. Also, under the direction of the village manager, we have come up with a way to include middle managers. Again, these middle managers include the commanders in the police department, the superintendent, public works, director of human resources, and the civic center facility manager also, accounting managers in finance department, and finally the director of inspection services in the economic development. Again, all of these is to so that they all work in. Right now, they're divided in 7 different functions or areas, all to come up with becoming more efficient using technology. They have great ideas, and we're hoping that we can harness those ideas to make sure that we're using technology, that we're making these improvements as we go. Now, getting into the actual numbers for the fiscal year 2016 proposed budget, the total budget is $24,576,370, and that's split between operating, which is $15.5 million, $1.9 million for debt service, $5.3 million goes into capital, and that includes motor fuel tax, the general capital, the water main, and the sewer. $1.1 million for risk management, that includes insurance, workers' comp, $595,000 for vehicle and equipment replacement. 3.5, as I have outlined, 3.5 million is the using of reserves for capital as it's indicated by the financial policy that we have in place. Again, it's 77 full-time equivalent employees that we're budgeting for. And this is where we believe that it can be sustained based on our current economic conditions. Now, the revenue summary basically tells you where the money comes from. 56% or about $13.3 million comes from tax collection, so that includes property taxes, sales tax, income tax, amusement taxes. Basically, this is the major revenues area. Fees and fines or permits, that's about 4% or $973,000, as indicated by the labels fees, fines. 1% comes from intergovernmental revenue. These are basically grants that we receive from either the federal or state government. Charges for services, so that's 22% or about $5 million, and that's basically the water sales and related charges. The rest is other financing sources. So this is the using reserves that we have accumulated via creating these efficiencies over the last 2 or 3 years. Where does that money go? Again, it's a balanced budget, so expenditures match revenues. 40% of that goes into salaries, so that's most of the budget. That's where it goes to, salary and benefits. So that's about $9.5 million. Contractual services is 22% or $5.2 million. Contractual services include items such as legal, IT services, those kind of audit fees, engineering fees. Commodities is about 3%, and that includes the cost of salt, or the cost of operating supplies, and also fuel. 9% is the financing and expenses. So this is the insurance premiums. And then finally is the capital outlay, which is the capital items, and that's 26%. This slide basically outlines what the budget is for every fund that we have, that the village has right now. And as you can tell, the general fund and the water and sewer operations are our main funds, and those are the largest funds that we have. So one of the interesting items here is the 2,900% increase over the prior year. When you look at that number, it does seem pretty high, but that has a lot to do in the way that the TIF is being calculated. The county issue a change on how this is being calculated, so that's so we're expecting a lot higher revenues this time. And in fact, we just got the new amounts, and it goes in line with what we're proposing here. Now, the general fund, again, is our main fund, and this one we split into different operating departments. And our largest departments are the police department and public works. So they take the most of that funding available. Everything else is split among the other smaller departments. On the water and sewer side, again, we split it among 4 different operating departments. Public works, financing, and insurance takes the most of it, and then administration and finance. So employees are split between the general fund and the finance and the water and sewer fund. Other capital investments. These are investments that we're proposing based on current economic conditions. So we do have the ability, as a reminder, the budget basically sets a limit on how much the village can spend. It's not a requirement. So these items here, depending on different conditions, we may come back to the board and make adjustments as needed. The investments that are outlined includes 5 police department vehicles, 1 plow truck via a lease, and then 3 public works vehicles. On the technology side, again, we're continuing to increase the use of technology, and that includes the year 2 payment for our software, which is BSNA. Includes a document management system and also a network hardware replacement program. Now, the reason I mentioned those items are based on current economic conditions because there are potentially a lot of changes that may affect the village significantly, so we may need to adjust them depending on what really happens. But this one is a lot of information here that I'm going to provide, so I'm hoping that I can get the point across here. But so the first thing here is, so as a reminder, we have a 65% fund balance policy, and these are it's a 5-year forecast, and this is basically the requirement that we need to keep on in our savings account, if you will. And the reason it keeps it grows is because we're estimating the revenues are going to increase, especially with the Meyer and hopefully with all those businesses coming online. These will continue to increase. But the other thing that comes into place is our actual fund balance, what we're actually forecasting. So that's the red line here. And as you can see, fiscal year 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, they're all below what the 65% policy requires. And one of the main reasons it goes down to in 2016 is the transfer to the capital plan to the 65% fund balance. But then there's also ongoing litigation, which I believe I don't have all the details, but that's out there, and that's going to make us go into the fund balance here. So right now we're forecasting that we're going to be at 87% fund balance. Fiscal year 2016, the budget, it's going to take us to 59%. And then 2017, 60%, 2018, 61%. And one of the things that I like to bring up at this point is that the capital plan does call for a $5 million debt issuance in fiscal year 2018. So being below that 65% policy requires us to have a plan in place to get these 65% or get the fund balance back to 65%. And we do, and we believe that is attainable. So the plan for this is basically taking funding out of every year budget, which will require management to become more efficient, find different savings strategies to make sure that we are keeping up with our plan to bring the 65% fund balance policy back. And that includes $224,000 fiscal year 2017, $464,000 in 2018, $276,000 in 2019. This is a combined $1.5 million that is going to come from the operating revenues that we're going to be allocating we're going to be budgeting for every fiscal year over the next 5 years to bring these 65% fund balance back up. And then to add to that briefing is the property values continue to decline. Today we actually receive what the EAV is going to be for the village, and that's a decrease over 5% over last year's EAV. We originally had forecasted 4%, and it came up at 5%. Again, comparing it to 2012, which was the year when we had the highest property values in town, the decrease has been over $145 million, or 33% decrease. So that's significant because credit rating agencies will look at these numbers and they calculate how much the village can borrow based on property values. So this has a great effect on that too. Some more of the financial planning challenges that are coming up, and that includes the current state's budget. As you know, the governor has proposed a lot of different cuts to the budget, or basically true-ups. So for the fiscal year 2015 budget, for the state budget, which ends June 30th, one of the proposals is to reduce the income tax by $2 or $3 per capita. If this is done on a per-month basis, that turns out to be a $250,000 cut to the village just for the fiscal year 2015 state budget. And then the proposed 2016 state budget, it's a 50% reduction. So that it's about $2.4 million. They're going to be that we're going to have to be proactive about if it actually goes through when it comes to May and June time. And then the again, impact of ongoing litigation and what the hit is going to be on cash reserves. So we're going to have to bring that back. Again, based on these, one of the areas where our credit rating agencies mentioned that we were very strong in was the fund balance. And unfortunately, that's, as I mentioned before, that's declining to 59%. So that could potentially result in a bond rating downgrade. But again, that's just all based on the different economic conditions it seems that are changing every day. So, and then there's also the declining on water sales. In conclusion, the fiscal year 2015 budget was used to execute long-term plans, continuing to analyze all the different processes that we have in place, making sure that we're using the technology and the resources that we have to its full capacity. Fiscal year 2016 is going to be used to keep on schedule with the capital plan. Again, our priorities, or the village priorities, continue to be maintaining the level of services while also keeping up with the capital plan. Employee cross-training, all the departments working together, and also that includes the middle managers. And also, again, keeping an eye on everything that's going on with the state and how it will affect our fiscal year 2016 budget. With that, I'd like to just thank the village administrator, the department heads for working on building this budget, and I'll take any questions.
I want to thank you for everything you've done. It's, love the graphics. You know, we can see, even a big difference from last year, and you've put a lot into it, so thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any of the trustees have any questions for Kevin on the budget? I know we all sat through different meetings with them and chewed this thing out till it came to fruition here. Anyone in the audience have any questions on the budget? Well, thank you for attending, to appreciate that. If there's no questions on the budget then, I ask for motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion by trustee Butler, second by trustee Mount. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you. We'll start our regular board meeting in just a few minutes.